Welcome to God in the Wild. I'm your host, Kent Harrop. In this first season, we'll explore how nature heals, inspires, and restores us. We'll consider, too, ways in which the natural world connects with and awakens us on our spiritual journey. John Muir, the great conservationist and mystic, put it this way: "Into the forest I go to lose my mind and find my soul." Each episode will reflect upon ways nature speaks into and expands our spiritual lives. Welcome to God in the Wild. We're going to explore how the word salvation is related to the Latin word salve, which means to be whole or complete. And so the question I would pose for us this day is, what does it mean for you? What does it mean for me to become more whole and complete? I think we are each aware of the brokenness within us, where we are fragmented, and where we long to have a sense of completeness, wholeness, healing, restoration. All of that is spoken of in the phrase salvation. In that phrase, to be saved. What does it mean for you and me to become more whole and more complete? To explore this, I want to turn to a story in the Bible. As a Christian, my own tradition, I turn to the New Testament as a source of healing and hope, as well as to the Hebrew Scriptures. Where do you turn to for wisdom? Where do you turn for guidance? So listen to this story of a blind beggar named Bartimaeus. And whether you take this story literally or metaphorically, listen for the truths that are being offered for your life. As Jesus and his disciples and a large crowd were leaving Jericho, Bartimaeus, son of Timaeus, a blind beggar, was sitting by the roadside. When he heard that it was Jesus of Nazareth, he began to shout out and say, "Jesus, Son of God, have mercy upon me." Many sternly ordered him to be quiet, but he cried out even more loudly, "Son of David, have mercy upon me." Jesus stood still and said, "Call him here." And they called the blind man, saying to him, "Take heart, get up, he is calling to you." So throwing off his cloak, Bartimaeus sprang up and came to Jesus. Then Jesus said to him, "What do you want me to do for you?" The blind man said to him, "My teacher, let me see again." Bartimaeus threw off his cloak. What is it that weighs you down? What is it that burdens you? A friend of mine, speaking of his own resentments and bitterness that he holds on to, some of that bitterness and resentment going back decades, he says it's like carrying a bag of rocks over his shoulders wherever he goes. And it's so exhausting to carry that bag of rocks. And he knows it doesn't serve him well, and he knows that he is weighed down. But that bag of rocks which he holds over his shoulder is familiar. It's his constant companion. And even though it doesn't serve him well, he can't let go of that bag of rocks. Bartimaeus threw off his cloak. He threw off that bag of rocks he was carrying, that which weighed him down, his blindness. And he went up to Jesus, and Jesus said, "What do you want me to do for you?" And Bartimaeus said, "I want to see." It invites the question, what do you and I want to see more clearly? Where is our vision clouded? What biases and prejudices keep us from living our life more fully? I think sometimes, in a spiritual sense, we put God in a box and we say, God is like this, nothing more and nothing less. The story of Bartimaeus is about casting open the lid of that box and seeing oneself and seeing the world and seeing creation and seeing the challenges of our time with fresh eyes, new ways of seeing. So what is it that you need to see more clearly? Where are your eyes glazed over? I think in the midst of this pandemic, we're aware of the challenges in our society. We're more aware of racism. The recent shooting of Asians in Atlanta, the racial injustice that permeates our culture in so many different ways for people of color. So many of us, white folk like me, white males of privilege, have had my eyes glazed to the needs and complexity and challenges that my sisters and brothers of color are facing. I want to have that glazed film over my eyes cleared away. I want to see my sisters and brothers through their own eyes, through the challenges that they are facing. And I want to be an advocate. I want to stand in solidarity for a better future for all of us. Bartimaeus' eyes were filmed over. They were glazed over. He could not see clearly. So where do we want to see our eyesight expanded? What do we want to see illuminated in our world? Where do we want to grow? Where do we want to expand? That's what the journey of salvation is all about. That's what it means to be saved. That Latin phrase, salve, is the root for the word salvation. The word salve means to become whole and complete. Where do we feel called to become more whole and more complete? Jesus looked at Bartimaeus and said, "What can I do for you?" And Bartimaeus said, "I want to see." In the journey towards salvation, we become aware of those bags of rocks, those wounds, those regrets, that shame, those hurts that we carry with us, where we can't forgive ourselves or we can't forgive someone else who has wronged us. Where do we need to cast off our cloak like Bartimaeus threw off his cloak and went to Jesus? Where do you and I need to become free, more whole, more complete? There's this wonderful phrase, a Chinese proverb, that says the twisted tree lives its life while the straight tree ends up in planks. Let me say that again. Chinese proverb, the twisted tree lives its life while the straight tree ends up in planks. We are all twisted trees, aren't we? We are all full of twists and turns and detours, mistakes and errors and do-overs we wish we could bring about in our life, but we can't. That's the stuff of life. There's a wonderful book by Richard Rohr, the Franciscan monk and mystic, entitled Falling Upward, Spirituality for the Two Halves of Life. And what Richard Rohr says, in the first half of life, we're focused on our identity, who we are, what are we good at, who will go with us. In that first half of our life, we are shaping our identity. And in the second half of life, we fall on our nose. We stumble. We fall. We make mistakes. We have people who break trust with us through no fault of our own. We have a difficult diagnosis. We have challenges in our life. And Richard Rohr says it's in the second half of life that we are forced to deal with hard questions like, what do I really believe? What values really guide my path? Who is God for me? Not who do others say God is, but who do I really believe God to be? What doubts and frailties and struggles do I carry with me? And what difference does it make? What lessons can I glean from those challenging times, those twists and turns and detours? And Richard Rohr says not to romanticize at all the difficulties and pain of life, but to say that those difficulties and painful moments, those twists and turns and detours, invite us to wrestle with those hard questions and to glean some insight, some wisdom that we otherwise would not have. That is the journey of salvation. It is not a destination. It is a process of becoming more whole, more complete, becoming more aware of the twists and turns of our life and embracing those and claiming the lessons that can be gleaned. And as a result, we have a better sense of who we are and what we've become. And to say that that is enough. There's that old adage that says, God don't make no junk. Each one of us has inherent worth and meaning, created by the creator of the cosmos, of heaven and earth. We are invited to see ourselves and one another through the Creator's eyes. And that is a glimpse into salvation. Thank you for listening to this episode of God in the Wild. Please share this episode with friends and subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. You can follow God in the Wild on Facebook and Instagram at God in the Wild Pod. You can subscribe online and leave us a rating and review. This podcast is a production of the First Baptist Church of Beverly, Massachusetts. In the spirit of John Muir, go out into the wild and find and feed your soul. I'm Kent Harrop. Thanks for listening.